Okay, let's look at dividends. So there are a couple different kinds of dividends. Companies can issue cash, stock dividends, and we'll talk about both of those here in just a minute. The most common is probably just a plain old cash dividend. So the company is making money, they have enough money or cash in their retained earnings, and they want to pay that back to their stockholders in order to share those earnings back with their investors and the owners of the company. They also need to make sure they have enough cash to pay those dividends. So those are two qualifications. They have to have sufficient balance in retained earnings, and they also have to have enough cash on hand to pay the dividend before they can issue a dividend. A dividend is not guaranteed in most cases, so a company can choose to issue or not to issue. And some companies do tend to give dividends on a regular basis, assuming they're profitable, and some don't. So the basic types of dividends are cash dividends paid out on common or preferred stock. 73% of companies pay out on common stock, 23% on preferred stock. Let's look at the entries associated with cash dividends. There's 3 important dates. First one is the date of declaration. This is the date that the company decides they're going to pay a dividend, and on that date they have to record a liability for that dividend. Then they will schedule a date of record. So whoever happens to own the stock on that particular date are the ones that are going to actually receive the payment. And there's no journal entry on the date of record. And then we have the date of payment. This is when they actually make the payment to the stockholder. So let's look at what each one of those look like. So the first date we have, remember, was the date of declaration. So this says on January 19th, a $1 per share cash dividend is declared on Dana Inc.'s 10,000 common shares outstanding. The dividend will be paid on March 19th to stockholders of record on February 19th. So on the date of declaration, we debit retained earnings for $10,000 credit common dividend payable. And you can see that amount, that $10,000, is the 10,000 shares times the dividend amount per share, which was $1. So credit the common dividend payable. Then we have the date of record, and there's no entry. They're going to go in and figure out who actually owns the stock on that particular date, and those people, even if they sell it the next day, will still be eligible for the dividend payment. And then we have the date of payment. So on the date of payment, we just debit the liability, common dividend payable, and we go ahead and credit our cash account for that amount. Company could also issue stock dividends. So why might they issue a stock dividend? Well, it says here that it can be used to keep the market price on the stock affordable. So if you know basic supply and demand, the more supply there is in the market, then the lower the price should be. So assuming that the company issues stock, they're going to put more stocks into the marketplace, and in which case that should drive down the price a little bit. There's also, it can provide evidence that the management's confidence that the company is doing well. So perhaps they believe in that the stock price is going to go up. They can go ahead and issue this instead of cash. It doesn't impact the total stockholders' equity in any way or have any effect on assets or liabilities. And obviously the main reason is to reward your investors. That's the only reason you issue a cash or stock dividend. Another reason, maybe the company doesn't have a lot of cash on hand, so they might issue stock instead to keep their stockholders happy. Now, stock dividends are a little bit different. There's 2 types of stock dividend. One is a small stock dividend, which is equal to or less than 25% of the previously outstanding shares. The other is a large stock dividend that's going to be greater than 25% of the previous outstanding shares. And those 2 are handled just a little bit differently. If it's a small stock dividend, we get a capitalized retained earnings for the market value of the shares to be distributed. If it's a large stock dividend, we capitalize retained earnings for the minimum amount required by state law, which is usually par or stated value. So let me run through a couple of examples to show you what that looks like. So here we have on December 31st, Quest declared a 2% stock dividend when the stock was selling for $10 per share. Stock will be distributed to stockholders on January 20th, and then let's go ahead and make the December 31st entry when they declared the stock dividend. Now, they don't give you all of the information up here at the top, so we're going to have to come down here a little bit. It looks like they issued 100,000 shares, and it was 2% stock dividend. Okay, let me restate that. It looks like they have 100,000 shares currently outstanding. If they do a 2% stock dividend, that means they're going to issue 2,000 new shares. And then that's at market. This is a small stock dividend. So the market price is $10 per share. So that's $20,000 that they need to reduce retained earnings by. And then we're going to go ahead and credit our common stock dividend distributable, which is the number of shares times the par value, or $2,000. So this $2,000 is going to be our common stock dividend distributable. $20,000 will be our debit to retained earnings. And then the difference between our $20,000 and our our $2,000 is $18,000. And that will become our credit to paid-in capital in excess of par value. And we can see what happens to our stockholders' equity section. Here is before and here is after. So we've added a section for common stock dividend distributable. Our contributed capital in excess of par value goes up by $18,000 from 8 to 18. And my retained earnings goes down by the $20,000. It was 35, now it's down to 15. If we have a large stock dividend, it's a little bit easier. So this one says December 31st, Router declared a 40% stock dividend when the stock was selling at $8 per share. State law requires that large stock dividends be capitalized at par value. So this selling price of $8 is irrelevant for a large stock dividend. So it looks like we have here 50,000 shares were previously issued and outstanding. We'll multiply that times the stock dividend percentage, 40%. So they're going to issue 20,000 new shares. And we multiply that times the par value, so that's $20,000. That will become my debit and my credit. Debit retained earnings, so I'm going to reduce my retained earnings by $20,000. Credit that common stock dividend distributable.